The city had its busy streets, crowded markets, and loud traffic, but Leo liked to find quiet corners where few people went. He was always curious, always looking for places that others ignored. One afternoon, as rain lightly fell from the gray sky, he wandered down a narrow alley he had never noticed before. At the end of the alley stood an enormous, old building. Its doors were tall and cracked, and the paint had peeled away like old paper. A faded poster on the wall showed smiling faces from a long-forgotten play. Above the door, golden letters had once spelled the name of the theater, but now only shadows of letters remained. Leo's eyes lit up. An abandoned theater, he whispered to himself. He could feel a strange excitement bubbling inside him. He loved old buildings, the ones that carried stories in their walls, and this one seemed to whisper secrets of the past. Carefully, he pushed open the heavy doors, and they creaked loudly, echoing through the vast empty hall. Dust floated in the air, catching the little sunlight that slipped through the broken windows. As Leo stepped inside, he noticed a figure at the far end of the theater. A girl sat cross-legged on the worn stage, sketching on a notebook that balanced on her knees. She had dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and wore a simple blue sweater. She didn't seem to notice him at first, completely focused on her drawing. Leo's curiosity grew. He had never expected to find anyone here. "Hello," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl looked up quickly, her eyes wide and alert. For a moment, Leo thought she might be upset or angry to see him, but then she smiled shyly. "Oh. Hi. I didn't hear you come in," she said. Her voice was soft, like a gentle breeze. "I didn't mean to disturb you," Leo said, taking a few careful steps closer. I've never seen this place before." The girl closed her notebook and stood. "Neither have I. I come here sometimes to draw. It's quiet, and I like imagining what the theater was like long ago." Leo's eyes sparkled. "Really? I love exploring old buildings too. I never thought I would find someone else who comes here." Her smile grew wider. "I'm Maya," she said. "And you are?" "Leo," he replied, shaking her hand. Their fingers brushed lightly, and both felt a strange warmth. Neither said anything about it, but they both noticed. They spent the next hour walking through the theater together, speaking in soft tones so as not to disturb the echoes of the past. Leo admired the tall columns that still stood proudly, even though their paint was chipped. Maya pointed out details in the carvings she had noticed before. They laughed as they discovered a row of broken seats, imagining actors performing and people clapping in the past. "This place must have been beautiful once," Leo said, stepping onto the stage. He waved his arms as if he were performing for an invisible audience. Maya laughed, the sound echoing sweetly in the empty hall. "I can almost see it too," she said, turning in a slow circle. "The lights, the music, people in elegant clothes. It must have been amazing." They moved to the balcony, peering down at the stage from above. Leo pointed out a spot where the light from the broken windows fell perfectly on the stage floor. Maya grabbed her notebook again, quickly sketching the pattern of the light. "I like to remember it like this," she said. "Even if it's empty now, it still has a kind of magic." Leo nodded, feeling the same way. "Yeah. I feel like every old building has a story. You just have to listen." As the rain outside grew heavier, they reluctantly realized it was time to leave. They stepped out into the alley together, sharing one last look at the theater. "Will you come back?" Leo asked. Maya smiled. "I think I will." If you want, we can explore it together next time. I'd like that, Leo said. He felt a strange excitement not just for the theater, but for the promise of new friendship. They said their goodbyes, but neither of them rushed away. Both looked back at the abandoned theater once more, and for the first time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt alive, waiting for stories yet to be created. And somewhere deep inside, Leo and Maya both felt that something wonderful had just begun. The rain continued to fall, washing the streets, but inside Leo's heart, there was a warmth that even the gray sky could not cool. He had discovered a place of forgotten beauty and a girl who might make it even more magical. The next Saturday morning, Leo woke up feeling unusually excited. He had spent the whole week thinking about the abandoned theater and, most of all, about Maya. He could still remember her soft smile and the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about the building. Today, he decided, he would return and maybe, just maybe, he would meet her there again. As he reached the alley, the theater loomed ahead, mysterious and silent under the bright morning sun. The doors, though old and creaking, opened easily for him. Inside, the smell of old wood and dust greeted him like an old friend. He walked slowly, looking at the shadows and broken seats, hoping to catch a glimpse of Maya. He didn't have to wait long. In the far corner, near the stage, she sat with her notebook open. Her hair was tied back differently today, and she wore a green sweater that matched the color of the sunlight spilling through the cracked windows. When she noticed him, her eyes sparkled. "Leo," she called softly, waving. "You came." "Of course," he replied with a grin. "I couldn't wait to see the theater again, and you?" Maya blushed slightly but quickly looked back at her sketch. "I've been drawing some of the old curtains and balconies. I wanted to capture how they used to be." Leo leaned closer to see her work. Her sketches were amazing, filled with detail and care. He felt impressed and a little shy. "You're really talented," he said. "I wish I could draw like that." "You can help me imagine the stories," Maya said. "Drawing is one part. You can create the adventures that happen here." Leo felt a thrill. He had never thought of the theater like that before. "Stories?" he asked. "Yeah," Maya said, smiling. "We can make up our own plays or adventures. Imagine knights, princesses, or even heroes from the future, anything. We can perform it in our minds or write it down. We don't need anyone else." Leo's eyes widened. "That sounds amazing. Let's do it." For the next few hours, they explored every corner of the theater. They climbed the old stairs to the balcony, imagining it full of people clapping. They tiptoed across the stage, pretending it was a royal hall. They even rearranged some of the broken chairs to form an audience, laughing whenever a chair tipped over. The theater was no longer abandoned, it was alive in their imaginations. As they rested near the stage, sharing an old bench, Leo realized how easy it was to talk to Maya. He told her about his love for old buildings, how he loved to hear the stories that walls seemed to hold. Maya shared her dream of becoming an artist who could capture the magic of forgotten places. Their voices blended with the soft creaks and sighs of the theater, creating a peaceful harmony. "I like spending time with you," Leo said quietly, almost afraid to break the calm. Maya looked up, a little surprised, then smiled. "I like spending time with you too," she admitted. "It's like, the theater brings out the best in us." They laughed softly, and the sound echoed through the hall, as if the theater itself was responding. Leo noticed how sunlight fell perfectly on Maya's hair, making it glow slightly. For a moment, he forgot everything else: school, homework, even the rain that had fallen the day before. All that mattered was this quiet, magical space and the girl who shared it with him. Before leaving, they promised each other that they would return the next weekend. "We'll discover more corners, and maybe even create our first story together," Maya said, packing her notebook carefully. Leo nodded. "Yes, and maybe one day we can invite others to see it. But for now, it's our secret." As they stepped outside, the city felt a little brighter. The alley, which had seemed ordinary before, now felt like the entrance to another world. Leo waved goodbye, and Maya waved back. Both of them walked home slowly, smiling, carrying the quiet thrill of discovery and the growing warmth of friendship. That night, Leo lay in bed thinking about the theater. He thought about Maya's sketches, her laughter, and the way her eyes had seemed full of wonder. He realized that the theater had given him something more than adventure. It had given him a friend who understood him in a way no one else had. And somewhere deep in his heart, he felt that this was just the beginning. The abandoned theater, once silent and empty, had started to echo with laughter, imagination, and the soft beginnings of a bond that neither of them fully understood yet, but both were eager to explore. The following Saturday, Leo hurried through the rain-soaked streets with a small bag slung over his shoulder. Inside were a few things he thought might help them: some chalk, a notebook, and an old flashlight. He could hardly wait to meet Maya at the abandoned theater. The past week had felt long, and every day he thought about the adventures they had imagined together. Today, he hoped they could take things a little further. When he arrived, the theater stood silent and proud, despite the cracks in its walls and the peeling paint. Leo pushed the heavy door open, and the familiar creak echoed through the empty hall. Inside, he found Maya already there, kneeling on the stage and arranging her sketches across the floor. She looked up and smiled as he entered. "Leo. You came," she called cheerfully. "I wouldn't miss it," he said, grinning. "I brought some supplies. Maybe we can do more than just imagine this time." Maya's eyes lit up. "Like what?" "Well," Leo said, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret, "we could make our own little performance. Not for anyone else, just us. We can use the stage, the chairs, even the old curtains. We can pretend it's a real play." Maya's excitement was clear. She jumped to her feet. "That sounds amazing. Let's do it." They began by sketching a rough plan of their performance. Leo suggested they create a story about two explorers who discover a hidden treasure, while Maya added ideas about magical creatures and secret doors. Together, they merged their ideas into a short story that felt full of adventure and mystery. Next, they prepared the stage. Leo moved old chairs to form a tiny audience, careful not to break them further. Maya found scraps of fabric and used them to create makeshift costumes for their characters. They even used pieces of the broken curtains as props. With each step, the theater felt less abandoned and more alive. When they finally began their rehearsal, they found it surprisingly fun. Leo acted as the brave explorer, moving carefully across the stage, while Maya played the role of the clever guide, leading him through imaginary obstacles. They stumbled and laughed, sometimes forgetting their lines or tripping over a chair. The sound of their laughter filled the theater, bouncing off the walls and making the space feel magical. During a quiet moment, Leo looked at Maya. She was crouched on the stage, pretending to examine a treasure map, her hair falling softly over her face. He felt a sudden warmth in his chest. Maya caught him staring and raised an eyebrow with a playful smile. "What?" she asked, though her voice was gentle, teasing. "Nothing," Leo said quickly, rubbing the back of his neck. This is fun. I've never had so much fun in one place. Maya smiled again. Me neither. It feels like the theater is alive with us here. I can almost hear it cheering. They continued to rehearse, improvising lines and adding small details. Leo discovered that he loved how easily they worked together, how their ideas seemed to flow naturally. Maya noticed how brave he was, not just in acting, but in sharing his ideas freely. The theater had become more than a building, it had become a bridge between them, connecting their imaginations and hearts. Hours passed like minutes. When they finally stopped to rest, they sat side by side on the old stage steps. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light through the broken windows. They didn't speak for a few moments, just enjoying the quiet companionship and the soft hum of the evening. You know, Maya said softly, I think we should do this every weekend. The theater, it's our place now. Leo nodded, feeling the same excitement. Yes. And maybe one day, we can invite other people to see it. But for now, it's our secret world. As they packed up their small collection of props and sketches, Leo realized something. The theater had brought them closer not just to its past, but to each other. He didn't need anyone else to make him happy. All he needed was Maya and the adventures they could create together. They stepped out into the evening, the sky painted with shades of orange and pink. The theater stood silently behind them, holding the echoes of their laughter and the beginnings of a bond that promised many more stories to come. Leo looked at Maya and smiled. She smiled back, and for the first time, they both understood that their friendship was growing into something much deeper, something that neither of them had expected, but both secretly welcomed. The abandoned theater was no longer just a building. It was a place of imagination, laughter, and the quiet start of a connection that would shape both their lives. A week passed since Leo and Maya had their first playful rehearsal on the theater stage. Both of them had been eagerly waiting for Saturday, excited to continue their secret adventures. But when Leo arrived at the alley that morning, he noticed a small crowd gathered around the theater. Curious and a little uneasy, he pushed through and saw a sign posted on the wall. The sign was bright white with bold letters, "Abandoned theater to be demolished. New development planned." Leo's stomach dropped. His eyes scanned the notice again and again, hoping to understand it differently, but the words were clear. The theater, their secret hideaway, the place that had brought him closer to Maya, was going to be destroyed. He felt a sudden weight on his chest. When Maya arrived a few minutes later, she gasped at the sign. "No, this can't be true," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her sketchbook fell from her hands, and Leo quickly helped her pick it up. "We have to do something," Leo said, trying to keep his voice calm even though his heart raced. "We can't let them destroy it without trying." Maya nodded, determination replacing her sadness. "We need to show people how special this place is. They have to see it the way we see it." Together, they spent the morning exploring every corner of the theater, taking notes, sketches, and photographs with Maya's small camera. Leo pointed out the carved details in the balconies, the way the light fell perfectly on the stage in the late afternoon, and the small corners where forgotten props hinted at past performances. Maya captured each detail carefully, her hands shaking slightly. As they worked, they began to talk about ideas for saving the theater. "We could ask the neighbors to visit," Leo suggested. "We can show them the beauty inside, even if it's old and broken. Maybe they will care too." Maya smiled at the thought. "And we can tell its story. We can show them that it's more than a building. It's history, imagination, and memories. Her eyes softened as she glanced at Leo, who nodded in agreement. They spent the rest of the day preparing small displays for visitors. They cleaned a few areas, rearranged old chairs, and placed Maya's sketches on the walls. Each step was filled with energy and a quiet hope that their efforts could make a difference. That evening, they invited a few neighbors who had been curious about the abandoned theater. The visitors walked slowly through the space, their eyes widening at the carved pillars, faded posters, and the dusty stage that seemed to tell a story of its own. Leo and Maya guided them, pointing out details, telling stories of past performances, and explaining the adventures they had imagined within its walls. "Wow," one neighbor whispered. "I never knew this place had so much character." "I know," Maya said softly, her voice almost trembling with emotion. "It's more than a building. It has life, history, and magic." Leo watched Maya as she spoke, feeling proud of her courage and passion. In that moment, he realized how much their bond had grown. They weren't just friends sharing a secret anymore, they were a team, working together to protect something they both loved deeply. As the evening ended, Leo and Maya stood side by side on the stage, looking out at the small group of neighbors who had visited. "We did what we could today," Leo said, his hand brushing lightly against hers. Maya didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled and gave him a small, encouraging nod. "We've started something," she said. "Even if they still decide to demolish it, we've shown that people care. And maybe they'll think twice." Leo felt a wave of warmth. He realized that the theater was no longer just a place for play and imagination. It had become a symbol of their friendship, creativity, and courage. And it had made him realize something else too: how much Maya meant to him. As they left the theater that night, the city lights flickering softly in the rain, both Leo and Maya felt a mixture of hope and determination. They knew that saving the theater would be a challenge, but they also knew that together, they could face it. Their secret hideaway, once quiet and lonely, now pulsed with energy, laughter, and the first sparks of something deeper than friendship. The abandoned theater had become more than a building. It was now a part of their lives, and it had brought them closer in a way neither of them could have imagined. The weekend arrived, and Leo could hardly wait to return to the theater. The previous week had been full of excitement and a little tension, and today he felt a mix of nerves and joy. He wanted to see Maya, to continue their adventures, and though he barely admitted it even to himself, he wanted to feel that quiet closeness they shared growing stronger each day. When Leo pushed open the theater doors, he was greeted by the familiar scent of old wood and dust. The sunlight streamed through the broken windows, casting warm golden beams across the stage. And there, sitting cross-legged in her usual spot, was Maya, her notebook open and her pencil moving swiftly across the page. "Leo," she called, looking up and waving. "I've been waiting for you." "I wouldn't miss it," he said, smiling. "I brought a few more ideas for our story." Maya's eyes sparkled as she closed her notebook and stood. "Let's see them." They spent the next hour arranging the stage and props for their new performance. Leo suggested that they add a secret treasure hidden in the theater, while Maya added the idea of a magical key that could only be found by those who were brave and kind. As they worked together, their hands occasionally brushed, sending small, surprising sparks through both of them. Each time it happened, they quickly looked away, laughing softly to cover their embarrassment. When they finally began rehearsing, Leo noticed how easily Maya brought the story to life. Her movements were graceful, her expressions full of wonder. Leo, in turn, discovered a confidence in himself that he hadn't felt before. He realized that with Maya by his side, he could be bold and imaginative without fear. At one point, Leo had to climb onto the balcony to rescue the treasure. Maya helped him steady a rickety railing, and for a moment, their hands touched longer than before. Neither moved away, and a quiet understanding passed between them. Leo's heart raced, and Maya's cheeks turned slightly pink. The theater, with all its shadows and dust, seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the warmth of their connection. After the rehearsal, they collapsed onto the stage, laughing and breathing heavily. Maya leaned back against the old curtain, her hair falling gently over her shoulders. Leo sat beside her, their knees brushing. "You know," Leo said softly, "I never thought an old theater could feel so alive." Maya turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. "It's not just the theater," she said quietly. "It's everything we do here. The stories, the adventures, and you." Leo's heart skipped a beat. He had been feeling the same way but hadn't known how to say it. Now, hearing Maya speak, it seemed so simple, so right. He reached out gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Maya didn't pull away, instead, she leaned slightly closer, her eyes soft and warm. I like being with you, Maya," Leo whispered. "I like this us here." Maya smiled, a shy but happy smile. "I like being with you too, Leo. More than I thought I would." They sat in silence for a few moments, the kind of silence that was full of meaning. The theater around them seemed to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the change in their friendship. For the first time, Leo felt that the bond between them was more than just shared adventures. It was something deeper, something he wanted to nurture carefully. Eventually, they stood and began tidying up the stage, putting props and sketches back into Leo's bag. Their hands brushed occasionally, each touch a reminder of the quiet understanding growing between them. Even as they left the theater, stepping out into the cool afternoon air, neither wanted to break the feeling that had settled so gently between them. Walking down the alley together, they laughed and talked about plans for their next rehearsal. Leo noticed the small ways Maya moved, the way her laughter lingered, and the quiet courage in her voice. He felt proud of her, grateful for her, and more certain than ever that this connection was something rare and beautiful. That night, as Leo lay in bed, he thought about the theater, the adventures they had shared, and the small moments that had made his heart feel lighter and warmer. Maya had become more than a friend. She had become someone who made the world brighter, even in a quiet, abandoned space. The abandoned theater had given them more than stories, it had given them each other, and Leo knew that the quiet sparks of friendship were now growing into something neither of them could ignore. And as sleep slowly carried him away, he smiled, excited for the adventures and feelings that awaited him and Maya in the days to come. After weeks of planning, rehearsing, and preparing, Leo and Maya were finally ready. They had decided to invite a small group of neighbors to see the theater in its momentary glory. It was not a grand performance with expensive costumes or lights, but to them, it was perfect. Every chair, every sketch, every small decoration had been carefully placed. The theater, once silent and forgotten, now felt alive. Maya was nervous, biting her lower lip as she adjusted a piece of fabric on the stage. "Do you think they will like it?" she asked, her voice soft. Leo smiled reassuringly. "They'll love it. It's not just the theater, they'll see how special it is through our story. And, they'll see us too." Maya looked at him and smiled, feeling a little braver with him by her side. Together, they waited for their first visitors to arrive. One by one, neighbors trickled in, their eyes widening as they stepped inside the theater. Some whispered to each other, marveling at the high ceilings, the carved pillars, and the old posters that had survived decades. Others took careful steps, looking down at the stage and the tiny audience of chairs Leo had set up. Leo and Maya guided them, sharing the story of the theater's past, pointing out the details they had discovered, and explaining the adventures they had imagined within its walls. The visitors listened attentively, nodding and smiling, clearly moved by the magic that the two young explorers had created. When it was time for the performance, Leo and Maya took their places on the stage. They performed a short story they had written together, a tale of two brave adventurers discovering a hidden treasure, solving puzzles, and sharing the joy of discovery. Leo acted boldly, while Maya's movements were graceful and full of imagination. Their voices carried through the theater, echoing off the walls, bringing life to every corner. At times, they stumbled over lines or knocked over a chair, but they laughed and continued, their energy infectious. The audience smiled and clapped at every twist of the story, clearly enjoying the play. In those moments, the theater felt alive again, as if it were thanking them for bringing it back to life, even just for a little while. During the performance, Leo caught Maya's eye. Her face was glowing with excitement, and he felt a warmth in his chest that went beyond the story they were performing. When he bowed at the end, Maya did the same, and their hands brushed slightly. They exchanged a small, secret smile, knowing that the connection between them had grown stronger during these shared moments. After the performance, the neighbors applauded warmly. Many came forward to thank Leo and Maya for showing them the theater in a new light. "It's beautiful," one neighbor said softly. "I had no idea this place held so much history and charm." "It really feels alive now," another added. "You two have made something magical here." Leo and Maya felt a mixture of pride and happiness. They had not only shared their story but also shared a piece of themselves. For the first time, they realized that their bond had created something that reached beyond the two of them. It had touched others too. As the audience slowly left, Leo and Maya stood together on the stage, looking around at the theater they had transformed. The light from the setting sun streamed through the broken windows, casting golden patterns on the floor. Everything seemed perfect and calm. "Thank you for being here," Maya said quietly, her voice soft but full of meaning. "No," Leo said, gently taking her hand. "Thank you. Without you, none of this would have been possible. You made the theater magical, and you made me feel something I didn't know I could." Maya squeezed his hand lightly, her cheeks warming. "And you made me brave enough to share it all. I'm glad we did this together." They stayed on the stage for a while, enjoying the quiet after the excitement. The theater, once abandoned and empty, now held laughter, stories, and the subtle warmth of two hearts discovering each other. They didn't need grand lights or fancy decorations to know that this place was special. Its magic came from their friendship, creativity, and the bond that had grown between them. As they finally left the theater, hand in hand, they felt a quiet satisfaction. The city outside was darkening, but the glow in their hearts was bright. They knew that the theater might not last forever, but the memories they had created and the feelings that were blossoming would remain. For Leo and Maya, the abandoned theater had become more than a place of imagination. It had become a home for their dreams, their laughter, and the beginning of something beautiful between them. The weeks passed quickly after their small performance. Leo and Maya continued to visit the abandoned theater every weekend, exploring its corners, imagining new stories, and sharing quiet moments together. But the reality of the theater's future was never far from their minds. The notice of demolition still hung in the alley, a constant reminder that their magical place might not survive. One bright Saturday morning, they arrived at the theater hand in hand. The air smelled of rain from the night before, and the sunlight sparkled on the dusty floors. Leo looked at Maya and smiled. "I'm glad we came today," he said softly. "Me too," Maya replied, her eyes bright. "Even if this place doesn't last forever, we've made it special. And, we've made memories too." They spent the morning tidying up, arranging old props, and rehearsing little skits, just as they had done for weeks. The theater felt alive with their laughter and energy. As they explored the upper balcony, Leo stopped and leaned against the railing, looking out over the stage. Maya stood beside him, her hand brushing lightly against his. "I'm going to miss this place," Leo admitted quietly. "It's more than a building to me now. It's everything we've shared here." Maya nodded, her eyes softening. "I know. But it's okay. The theater will always be a part of us, no matter what happens. And we can always create new adventures, wherever we go." Leo looked at her, feeling a warmth in his chest. He realized that the theater had given him something far more valuable than stories or old memories. It had given him Maya, and the bond they shared had grown stronger than any building could contain. As they walked back to the stage, Leo picked up a small, broken piece of wood that had once been part of the set. "We should keep something," he said. "A little piece of the theater to remember it by." Maya smiled and agreed. They chose a small wooden beam together, marking it with a tiny sketch of the theater and the letters L+M in the corner. It was a small token, but it symbolized everything they had built together: their creativity, their friendship, and the beginnings of something more. For a while, they simply sat on the stage, sharing stories of their favorite moments. They laughed about the times they had tripped over chairs, improvised lines, and created imaginary creatures. They talked about the neighbors who had visited, and how proud they felt to share the theater's magic with others. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow through the broken windows, Leo turned to Maya. "You know," he said softly, "this theater brought us together. And I don't ever want to lose that. No matter what happens, I want us to keep making memories together." Maya's cheeks warmed, and she squeezed his hand gently. "I feel the same way, Leo. This theater, it will always be part of us. But we don't need it to have adventures. We have each other, and that's more important." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the soft echoes of the theater around them. It had once been abandoned, forgotten by the world, but through their laughter, imagination, and care, it had been filled with life again. And even as it faced an uncertain future, it had given them something permanent, a bond that could not be erased. Finally, they stood and walked toward the doors, the evening air cool against their faces. Leo glanced back at the theater one last time, feeling a quiet gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Maya asked, smiling. "For everything," he said, turning to her. "For the stories, the laughter, and for you." Maya's smile grew, and she leaned slightly closer. "And thank you, Leo. For being brave enough to explore, imagine, and care. I couldn't have done this without you." As they stepped out into the fading light, they felt a sense of peace. The theater might not stand forever, but the memories and feelings they had created together would. The adventures, the laughter, and the quiet moments of friendship and love were theirs to keep. Hand in hand, they walked down the alley, ready to face the world together. They knew that life would bring new places to explore, new stories to create, and new memories to make. And as long as they were together, Every adventure, no matter where it took them, would be filled with the same magic they had discovered in the abandoned theater. The old building behind them may have faded into the past, but the connection between Leo and Maya had grown stronger than ever. And in that connection, they had found something far more enduring than any theater, the beginning of a lifelong journey together, full of creativity, courage, and quiet, unspoken love.